Hey everybody, welcome to The Markup. It's me, China B, your nurse practitioner and beauty expert, and I'm here today to tell you the truth about the beauty industry and what they're not telling you. So just a little introduction. I want to welcome you to my personal podcast where it's just me interviewing all of the people that I believe are interesting in the industry, and we're kind of just blasting through a lot of the garbage that's out there. So I wanted to just introduce myself and give you a quick recap of what you've already seen. So I recently put out an intro to what the markup means to me and why I decided to go on my own for a podcast. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm China B. I'm a nurse practitioner with over 20 years experience in many different areas of medicine. Most recently, in the last 10 years, plastic surgery and aesthetic medicine, which this industry has changed exponentially over the past 5 years, and it has grown leaps and bounds from when I started. So a little history of me is I started off my career as a baby nurse in the emergency room of St. Barnabas in Livingston, where I learned a ton. And one night during, a night shift that I was working with a bunch of my friends and really great nurses there, we had a house fire. And in that house fire, I was taking care of multiple family members. It was high paced, and I met one of the burn surgeons. And at that time, the burn ICU was a place where only, and still is, only the best of the best, super specialized nurses go to, and you could not get a job there. Like, everyone that worked there was completely there for life, and you only got a job if somebody retired or like went out on maternity leave. So it was one of the burn surgeons there that like literally pointed to me and said, I want you to come upstairs to the burn unit. I want you to be a burn nurse. And I really didn't believe him. And I wasn't sure that it was even something that I wanted to do. So I took a shot. I went up, I saw one hydrotherapy, and that was it. I was like, that's it. I want to do this for the rest of my life. So I started working in the burn ICU. And at the time, I went back to school just because I'm a nerd. So, those of you who know me know that I love learning and I love new things. So I decided to go back to school and get my NP. And all the while, I joke, and if you're a patient of mine, you've heard me say this before, I was constantly found by the plastic surgeon. So when I worked in the burn unit, I met a plastic surgeon who basically taught me everything I know. He was so supportive and very knowledgeable, and he basically was like, let me take you under my wing. I'll teach you how to suture and do all the things while you're in nursing school if you just help me in my practice while I go on conferences and whatever. So we worked together for a while. And then I decided plastics really wasn't my thing at that time because it was very hard for a nurse or nurse practitioner to get busy or even have a clientele at that time because the patients really just wanted to see a surgeon. So fast forward, I graduated, became a nurse practitioner, and I started working back in the emergency room because it was comfortable for me and I thought it was easy to work shift work. I worked night shift. And lo and behold, a couple years in, I meet another young plastic surgeon who was like, hey, I heard you have a plastics background and you did all this stuff in burn. If you're ever interested in helping me, let me know. So together we did that for a really long time. We opened up a practice in Asbury Park that I ran for a couple years and was doing really well. And then I got picked up by a big corporate group, which is where I am now. And if you guys have listened to my previous podcast, Unfilter It, you would see that that's where I was interviewing and talking to you guys about plastic surgery. So I just needed another platform where I can showcase a little bit more of my personality and really go in depth with some of these industry leaders of what makes them them. I really do think that the markup, as I described in the intro episode, is something that will encompass like the planning that somebody has when they go into plastic surgery or seeing a patient or creating a surgery, and just debunking some of the things that are out there. So why am I doing this episode first? I am not an expert in podcasting. So with a lot of people's recommendations, I wanted to give everyone a chance to kind of learn a little bit about me, why this podcast is important to me, and why I decided to do it. So I just decided to sit here in my little podcast studio and just talk to you about the why, the background, and the journey. So I told you all a little bit about why I decided to go solo. And I just think that it's more intimate. I can have interviews with people and we can talk about more intimate things, and like less in a group setting where we felt a little pressured to do, multiple episode filmings at once. Here I'm able to like not have to schedule time so much to like be in a recording studio. We have this great technology now where I can like Zoom people in and just, talk to them on their own time in their own comfort, which I think will create really cool conversations. So, another question that I've been getting a lot about why I decided to go into this podcast is the reason that I went into aesthetics per se. And now we're going on like almost 8 years ago, where I like really took off my hat of being in the operating room and coming out of the OR and really just focusing on aesthetics and non-invasive cosmetics, is because I just love that feeling that I get when I can see a patient and I can just really give them their confidence back. And that to me is like the whole why I do everything that I do. I'm very results driven and I have very high expectations. But if you're one of my patients, you know that part of my job is I basically just figure out what your expectation is of a treatment. And I try to match the treatment to your expectation. And that's really just it. That's where the magic happens. If I can deliver, and sometimes I can't and have to refer you to, a surgical space or a surgical procedure, then so be it. My goal is just to figure out what it is that you're trying to show on the outside and get you to that point. As people that know me know, I am an art collector. I love tattoos, and I, have collected a lot of tattoos on myself. Because it's a form of self-expression, I feel like what I do is also helping people express themselves in a certain way. You don't like your lips, they feel deflated, you want to fill them up, you want to, restore some of the aging process. That's what I'm here for. And, when I started in the industry, it was very, very small. So I didn't have a lot of people that I could reach out to and be like, hey, how do you do this? Or like, what are good training programs to get into? There was none of that. It was all really self-taught, or I would have to seek out surgeons and specialists in the arena and get training that way. But a lot of it was very self-taught, or like going to observe people or taking your own training, spending my own money, doing that sort of thing. And I see that a lot of people in this very rapidly growing arena have really capitalized on that and created these like opportunities or courses or weekend things that they're like, hey, anybody can be an injector, anybody could do Botox and filler, come take my class and you're good to go. So that was just appalling to me, because none of these courses took into consideration what we really take into consideration, such as anatomy, physiology, and just basic skill sets. So it was at that point where I decided, you know what, I really need to get into this training arena and help people who are interested in getting into the industry how to do it correctly. Because at the end of the day, I do think that people go into this who have a bit of an artistic flair and want to make people beautiful and feel beautiful. So I really wanted to contribute to the safety out there and really just help people on their journey of, living their best life and doing the job that they love. So that is why I became a trainer. And then when I became a trainer, I was really able to see what fast growth really does to an industry. And I think that this is across the board something that happens in any industry that grows fast, because outside people think that there's, fast money to be made. So more and more people go into it, and then it becomes more and more competitive and cutthroat. So without diving too much into that topic per se right now, because I'm going to have really good guests on for that conversation of, how this industry is just so cutthroat, and like who you can trust, and, what are reliable sources. That is an episode in its own right. But, the draw to aesthetics for me was really about the patient. It wasn't the glitz and the glam for myself. It was more for the, hey, I could do something really cool and take someone that's like, say, in middle age, and like back up their aging process a bit. And just all the technologies that are coming out now are amazing. But I think probably one of the things that have kept my head on tightly is that it can be very humbling if you really just stay in your lane and you just keep a beginner's mindset and try to aim to be better every day. And then what happens is you see what's out there, and it can be really scary. It can be very middle school, and it can be very pageant girl, if you will. And I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody by saying that, but what I mean is there are a lot of people that kind of scratch their way to advance, and that is another reason why I'm here and spreading the message that it really doesn't have to be like that, that we can create a community and make this specialty, which is what it is, really, really great again. But, with that comes some regulations and maybe some accountability that some people might be uncomfortable with. So more episodes, I promise, on that and the tea and all of that, because I know everyone wants to get down and juicy. But I kind of just wanted to give you a little backstory and journey of where we're going. And so these things are what keeps me passionate. Some of the biggest lessons that I've learned in this industry is really just to keep looking forward. Don't look to the sides. Don't look behind you. Just keep looking forward, an eye on the prize, and really remembering what it is that brought you to want to do this specialty. Because I feel like, and I know that the saying has been said many times and sometimes ad nauseum, where it's like, oh, community over competition. But it really is like, you have to find your tribe and not be afraid to share your ideas, your skill set, or if you learn something, you tried something and it turned out cool, and it gave a good outcome or whatever. Why not share that knowledge with other people so that they are also giving great results? I think the worst thing that's happened to us right now is it's been so fastly growing. There's so much information out there, many of which is wrong and not correct, and people unfortunately just trying to make fast money and get as many patients as they can, but they're delivering not great results. So I'm sure that those of you who are in the industry are seeing this too. You're getting patients now that are like afraid of filler. You suggest to them a treatment plan and they're like, oh no, I don't want filler. Well, it's because they're seeing really bad outcomes out there. So they don't want to have that happen to them or have that particular look that we're all seeing. So the state of the industry right now is really great and really bad at the same time. I feel like I mean, currently what's exciting me is the technology. There is all this technology that's coming out. There's even some old stuff that's coming out and being renewed again, like CO2 and things like that that deliver really good results in the right hands. I love that there is now other industry leaders that have the same opinion as me, and they're really looking into the research and talks that are not sponsored by particular drug companies or leaders that are bought by multiple pharma companies, so that a lot of the information that is coming out now at some of the conferences is more unbiased than I think it has been in the future. What's been frustrating is the misinformation that's out there from, unfortunately, people that are getting paid by companies to give this information. And it's sad for the consumer, because I see this a lot with my patients. They come in and they're like, "Hey, I saw this treatment on TikTok. Does it actually work?" And sometimes I'm like, "Yeah, that's a really cool treatment." Other times I'm like, "No, that doesn't even make anatomical sense." And so, I think as somebody, I like to think of myself as somebody with integrity, and that people, know has an honest voice. I like to kind of spread the information that's true and science based. So, I always say to people that are trying to sell me things, like, "Where's the science? Send me the paper. Let's go over, what the FDA says and what have you." Because there are a lot of bad practices out there. There are a lot of things coming out that people are doing that are not FDA approved. Just in the news yesterday or the day before, or I don't know when you're listening to this, but recently there were people doing aesthetic treatments in these med spas, and they're not even licensed. So it's really, really scary. And some of the changes that I'd like to see, and I'm going to have some guests that specialize in this and talk on this in particular, is we really do need some more regulatory and collaboration with people that are core, or, have this designated formal training like the dermatologists have and the plastic surgeons have. I do think that we should also have some sort of formal training for PAs, NPs, nurses, whoever wants to get into this field, because it is a medical specialty. So I've paired up with some great people, and I'm excited to bring them on to have these conversations more in depth. But my vision for the markup is to be a place where we can talk freely. Sometimes it's going to be controversial. Sometimes it's just going to be getting into picking the brain of some of the industry brilliant minds. I have some brilliant friends that do really cool things, and I just think that being able to have an arena where we can talk freely about it without bias, without, using it for marketing or whatever, where it really just is a bunch of geeks talking about how they plan for things. That's why I named it the markup, because, after every time, and if you're my patient too, I'll say it again, you'll be sitting in my chair and I always draw on your face first, and that's because I am formulating a plan in my head of what we're going to do. In surgery, we do the same thing, where we mark the area that we're doing surgery on before we do any surgery. And then it was a little play on words, because the markup in retail is the percentage beyond what you pay for cost of goods. So I thought it was very apropos for our industry, because this is kind of how things are, since a lot of the stuff that we do is cash based and not covered by insurance. So that is basically what the podcast is going to be about. We're going to talk to plastic surgeons, other injectors, artists, people in the beauty industry, tattoo artists, piercers, body modification. I have lots of ideas of really cool topics. And then obviously the controversy. Like, we're going to talk about being Instagram famous and what that means and how that translates into, how do you pick your injector? And actually, injector is like the worst term. I actually hate it because it doesn't designate any type of licensure or schooling. So I'm just going to say provider. And these are the types of topics that I like to get in. And of course, if you have any feedback at all, or there is like a burning topic that you want to talk about or learn about, please send me a message. I am very, very cool with even doing podcasts on site that are not here in the studio, that we can possibly just do at conferences, in the office. Like, any ideas are always welcomed. And this podcast really is for everybody. It's for you if you're a surgeon. It's for you if you're an aesthetic provider. It's for you if you're a consumer and you're just curious about, treatments and what's good and what the science is behind some of the treatments. And it's for you if you just want a little bit of tea and maybe a little bit of controversy. I'm here for that too. So I'm going to wrap it up now. I just kind of wanted to get our first little episode out and give you the intro to me and have you feel a little bit of, China on my own before I start hanging out with my friends. So as cliche as this is, I'm going to ask you to like, follow, subscribe, share. This is really how I'm going to get the word out there, is if people like you that are listening to me on your car ride or maybe at home when the kids are sleeping, I don't know. But this is how I get my word out and I'm able to spread the word around, is by your support. So I would really appreciate it. And give me a follow on Instagram. It's the Markup Podcast. I'll drop a link. And I just look forward to our next episode and our journey with the Markup Podcast with China B, your host. I'll see you soon.